In section 4.3, we will continue what we did with 4.2, except we will talk about special products. So first, let's talk about squaring a polynomial. When you square a polynomial, like ax plus b squared, then you have to make sure you write that term twice, ax plus b times ax plus b, and then you would FOIL these two binomials. So for example, if I have 3x minus 4 squared, here's a common mistake. Sometimes students just write 9x squared because 3x to the second power is 9x squared, negative 4 to the second power is 16, and this is incorrect. The correct way of doing this is to write 3x minus 4 times 3x minus 4, to write that out twice. Now here's what that looks like. So first, I'm going to take the 3x and multiply it to both terms in the second parentheses. Then I do the same thing with the negative 4. I multiply it to both terms in the second parentheses. So if you want to, you can write this out. You can write it out the long way. So you can write 3x times 3x, and then you have 3x times negative 4, and then you have a negative 4 times 3x, and then you have a negative 4 times negative 4. That's one way of doing it. I'm going to focus doing it more mentally now. So we have 3 times 3 is 9, and x times x is x squared. So 3x times 3x is 9x squared. 3x times negative 4, so I have a positive times a negative, so I have a negative sign. 3 times 4 is 12, and then I have the x, so it's a negative 12x. Same thing here. I have a negative times a positive, so it's a negative. Always start with the sign. So if you have a negative times a positive, it's going to be a negative. 4 times 3 is 12, and then we still have the x. And then we have a negative 4 times a negative 4, which is a positive 16. Again, be careful with the sign. A negative times a negative is a positive. Now let's combine our like terms. So we have a 9x squared minus 24x plus 16. Let's try the next one. So you have 7x plus 2 to the second power. So this is going to be 7x plus 2 times 7x plus 2. 7x times 7x, that is a 49x squared. 7x times 2, that is a 14x. 2 times 7, that is also a 14x. And 2 times 2 is 4. Now let's combine our like terms. So we have 49x squared plus 28x plus 4. Now what happens if you have the same terms like x and 9, but one negative and one positive? Well, let's take a look. We have x times x. We have x times x, which is x squared. And then we have x times 9, which is a 9x. Then I have a negative 9 times x, which is a negative 9x. And I have negative 9 times 9, which is a negative 81. Now, whenever you have a positive 9x and a negative 9x, those are going to add to 0, so we can cancel those out. And what we're left with is x squared minus 81. Next, we have 6x minus 5 times 6x minus 5. So we have 6x times 6x, 6x times 5, negative 5 times 6x, and negative 5 times 5. So 6 times 6 is 36, x times x is x squared. 6x times 5 is going to be 30x. Negative 5 times 6x is a negative 30x, and negative 5 times 5 is a negative 25. Then we cross out the two middle terms because we have a positive 30 and a negative 30, and this gives us 36x squared minus 25. Let's take another example. This time I'm going to actually write it out the long way because now we have an x squared and an x squared. So first I have x squared times x squared. And then I have x squared times a positive 4. Then I have a negative 4 times x squared. And then I have a negative 4 times positive 4. If I simplify that, remember when you multiply the same base, you add the powers. So 2 plus 2 is 4. This gives you x to the 4th. X squared times 4 is 4x squared. Negative 4 times x squared is a negative 4x squared. And negative 4 times 4 is a negative 16. Then I combine my like terms, so I cross out the two middle terms. And all I'm left with is x to the fourth minus 16. Lastly, we have x minus 8 squared minus x minus 3 squared. So here we have to be careful for a couple of reasons. One, whenever we have a square, it means we have x minus 8 times x minus 8. Same thing with the x minus 3. We have x minus 3 times x minus 3. And then we distribute. So we have x times x is x squared. And then we have x times negative 8, that's a negative 8x. Then we also have a negative 8 times x, that's a negative 8x. And a negative 8 times negative 8, which is a positive 64. And because I have two separate terms, I'm going to use parentheses for both terms. Now here's where you have to be super careful. You have a negative sign, and then we have a big parentheses when you multiply this. So we have x times x, which is x squared, x times negative 3, that is a negative 3x, and negative 3 times x, also a negative 3x, and negative 3 times negative 9, that is a positive 9. Now let's combine our like terms, negative 8 and negative 8. So we get x squared minus 16x plus 64. In a parentheses, minus x squared negative 3 is a negative 6x plus 9, also in a parentheses. So now we have x squared minus 16x plus 64. Now here's where you got to be very careful. Because that second parentheses has a negative sign in the front, we are going to distribute that negative sign. So this gives us a negative x squared. Negative times a negative is a positive 6x. Negative times a positive is a negative 9. So keep these both in parentheses until the very end, and then distribute that negative. So here's what happens. We have the x squared and negative x squared. Those are like terms, so they cancel and add up to be 0. Then I have a negative 16 and a 6, that is a negative 10x. And then I have a 64 minus 9, that is a positive 55. And that's it for this section.